I'd like to remind everyone about silencing your cell phones if you can do that. And I know that all of the names are here, but I thought it would be nice if everybody we can start by introducing ourselves to one another, and we'll start at the end.
Good morning. My name is Shelby Stanfield. I'm Vice Provost and Registrar at the University of Texas at Austin.
Good morning. Sandra Gregerson, Lone Star College System Executive Director of Student Success.
David Arazola, Institutional Effectiveness and Assessment Director, Laredo Community College.
Michael Endy, Executive Dean of Academics at Weatherford College.
James Goman with the Coordinating Board, and I want to thank you all for coming. I also want to take this opportunity to remind you that this meeting, like all advisory committee meetings, is being broadcast to the whole state, so smile and put on your best camera face.
Melissa Weinbrenner, Northeast Texas Community College. I'm Division Chair for the Social Sciences.
Mary Trevino, Texas A&M International University. I'm Associate VP for Academic Affairs.
Good morning, Jim Crucht. I'm Assistant Provost for Undergraduate Studies at Texas A&M.
Gary Don Harkey, Dean of Instructional Services at Vernon College.
Vanessa Valdez, Associate Director of Undergraduate Admissions at the University of Texas Pan American.
Edgar Palacios, Assistant Director of Admissions at the University of Texas at El Paso.
Jane Dennis, former Director of Academic Advising Services, now semi-retired and teaching as an Associate Professor at Tarleton State University.
Edgar Garza, Chair of the Social Sciences at Northwest Vista College, part of the Alamo Colleges.
Jim Nelson with the University of Texas at Tyler and Chair of the Tuning Councils.
I'm Mary Smith, Assistant Deputy Commissioner for the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board.
Very good. Well, thanks, everyone. We have a long agenda. We've got a lot of work to get started. I wanted to also, which I didn't remember, but if you would press your mic button when you speak so that all of our comments can be heard. We want to begin with item number 2 on the agenda, which is the consideration of approval of minutes from the October 19th, 2012 meeting. Are there any comments? These materials were mailed to the committee prior to coming, so maybe you've had a chance to review them. Or were there any corrections or to the minutes? All right, hearing none, we accept a motion for approval of the minutes. Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. All right, the minutes for the October meeting are done.
Okay, we're moving to item number 3 on the membership of the ACGM committee. It's been increased in size to 18 members. We have a member rotation schedule, which will essentially rotate 8 new people on to the committee. My understanding that there will be 3-year, 2-year, and 1-year appointments for these new members, and Rebecca Leslie will be getting with you and asking you to draw a number out of a cup for whether you're going to serve 1, 2, or 3 years in one of the slots that you have in your packet. The rotation schedule will continue with 6 members after this first time at 8, 6 members rotating off each year. So about a third of the committee.
All right. Updates from the item number 4, updates from the coordinating board staff. Stacy Silverman.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Stacy Silverman. I'm the Interim Assistant Commissioner for the Workforce and Academic Affairs and Research Division. and I'm also the Deputy Assistant Commissioner for Universities and Health-Related Institutions. Before I talk a little bit about how the advisory committee structure has been changed for all the advisory committees here at the Coordinating Board, I first wanted to let you know some of my staff who are in the room, and I want you all to know that they are always available to answer questions. So please don't hesitate to call on, email, whatever, text us, whatever, however you can get a hold of us. Feel free to come and ask us questions about anything, as long as it's related to higher education. Okay, so we've got Reinhold Cornelius and Andrew Lofters and Gary Tomerlin. And Gary is our Deputy Assistant Commissioner for Community and Technical Colleges. And I do want to let you all know that we have an additional staff member who will be leading our division beginning December 2nd. His name is Dr. Rex Peoples, and he'll be coming to us from Midland College. And we're all very excited about that. Probably I'm the most excited about that. Anyway, I did want to kind of go over with you the changes to the rules. Most notably, the Coordinating Board went through sunset during the past legislative session, and as a result of that, some legislation was passed that changed some of the activities and responsibilities of the board. Related to advisory committees, Senate Bill 215 now requires that appointments be made directly by the board. So your appointment is made by the board of the Coordinating Board. So our 9-member board appoints you to this committee. Additionally, no board members may serve on this particular advisory committee or any of our other advisory committees. And finally, the committee construct, the folks who are serving on this committee will now serve staggered 3-year terms. So that is a big change for you. And probably the biggest change is that any recommendations that you all make will go directly from this advisory committee to the board. So they're no longer recommendations to staff. They are, in fact, recommendations to the board. So that concludes my presentation for you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Stacy? Thank you very much. Okay, moving right along. We have a staff report on the Texas Common Course Numbering System meeting held November the 10th. Vanessa Valdez.
Yes, we just had our most recent meeting this Sunday prior to the TACRO conference in El Paso. Among some of the discussions, one of the main ones was regarding our website and website maintenance. We lost our website developer, so we were a little off track for quite a bit. So now that we're back on track, what we're going to be doing is to the Texas institutions that are part of TCCNS, we're going to be increasing our communication with them to update website contacts, institutional contacts. We have a lot of contacts that are, either have moved on to other institutions, or they've been, or they've changed to another individual that's maintaining the website. So we do have a lot of outdated contacts. So we're going to be encouraging the TCCNS members, institutional members, to update those so that we can also in turn increase the productivity and the changes with the matrix. We do have a lot of institutions, over 50%, who have not made changes to their matrix or their equivalency tables, rather, or the Texas Common Course numbering tables since 2011, 2012. And that might very well be because they haven't changed anything, but it could also be that, the contact hasn't been maintaining it. So we're going to be sending out some mass communications to make sure everybody's on board and we're as up to date as we possibly can be, so that it can be used in the way it is to assist students transferring from institution to institution. We also reviewed an application for membership from a new institution, and so hopefully we'll be able to be building our client basis as well. That's all the updates I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item of business on the agenda is the staff report and pending discussion on course descriptions and learning outcomes from the 2012 Tuning Oversight Council for Mathematics, Business, and Information Science, and that would be Jim Nelson.
Okay, before Jim gets started, everyone should be looking at this packet, course descriptions and learning outcomes, and it will have those courses, the tuning courses, as well as the learning outcomes project courses. They're in alphabetical order, and the tuning courses, if you want to just mark with a little T or whatever, are the accounting, the Business Communications Information Systems, BCIS, the BUSI, Business, Computer Science, COSC, and the Math. And then you can refer to the page numbers to find the courses as they discuss them.
Thank you. Again, as with the past tuning councils, once the vertical alignment was done, a set of courses developed that a student at a community college should complete to effectively transfer to the four-year institutions, and consensus was reached on what those courses needed to be. We then entered into the horizontal, the fine-tuning or the horizontal alignment process to look at those individual courses, to try and find consensus among all the offerings within the state, looking at the common elements, the non-common elements in regards to both catalog description and the student learning outcomes. Again, as with the previous courses, there were negligible student learning outcomes contained within the ACGM, so these are additions to that based on what is being taught. With one exception, which I'd like to identify in particular, the fine-tuning council, as well as the comments received during the 30-day comment period, supported that which was done. In that regard, I would recommend that those courses be considered as a package, as we have in the past, because of the scrutiny that they have undergone to this point. The one course where there was weak consensus coming out of the fine-tuning group was Accounting 2301. During the 30-day response period, that weak consensus turned into absolutely no consensus on a statewide basis. The issue of concern was not the description or the content of the course. It was boiled down to the prerequisite for the course. The fine-tuning group had recommended business calculus, math 2315, if I remember correctly, for that course. 1325, I'm sorry. I had recommended that as a prerequisite to the course. There was, let's just say there was overwhelming concern that that is not what was being done at the four-year institutions. It was, and therefore there was really no need to have that as a part of the ACGM. I think a piece of where it came in as a recommendation from the fine-tuning council, in looking back at the discussions, was an effort of that particular group to try and establish more of a curriculum that the students should be taking at the community college to move to a university. The intention of the tuning councils and the work of the committees has never been to establish a curriculum. Curriculum is the purview of the faculty within the respective discipline and within the respective institutions. That is what has always been done in the past, was to come up with a set of courses that a student is encouraged to take. And it's not a curriculum, it's not being laid out as a four-year process or a two-year process or anything. It's a set of courses that if a student completes these courses, the signatory four-year universities will accept those courses and transfer credit and apply it to their individual curricula in those respective fields. It was just, I think, a little bit of shakiness here that the group felt that the business calculus was an essential course in the student's repertoire of knowledge, and therefore it came in as a prerequisite. But from a statewide view at this, that course is not a prerequisite at most institutions, the vast majority of institutions. Therefore, in the listing that you see before you now, the business calculus 1325 has been dropped, and all that is being listed at this point to ensure that the students do have the adequate mathematics skills, as is supported by the student learning outcomes, is Math 1324. Now, there's been just one last minute change, which is a further deletion I want to call your attention to, is the package that you got before you was recommended co-requisite of Math 1324 or 1325. That last one needs to be struck from here completely because 1324 is a prerequisite to 1325. It makes no sense to have both listed. So the recommended co-requisite should simply be Math 1324, Mathematics for Business and Social Sciences, full stop. The remaining part of that co-requisite should be deleted. Now, with this incorporation, which does represent really consensus across the state now for what has been received during the 30-day comment period, I think this package is solid. I believe it is complete, coherent, and is going to be in the students' best interest. And again, it is all the way through with these additions and changes in the ACGM, with what is in the voluntary articulation compacts, does make sense for the student to begin pursuing a set of courses and then moving on to the baccalaureate degree. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them at this point.
I'd just like to comment to Mr. Nelson, Jim Kroc from Texas A&M. I've consulted with our College of Business faculty on this, and I fully intend to support the whole package. But they expressed a lot of concern that 1325 was not used as a prerequisite for Accounting 2301, and felt that if students went into Accounting 2301 or the equivalent course at Texas A&M without that business calculus background, they would have very little chance of being successful in the course. So I know there's consensus on the entire package. I will support the entire package, but there still remains a great deal of concern, I think, about that one particular course. Thank you for your work on this.
Thank you, sir.
I think at this point I would entertain a motion that we accept these courses as a package. And to remind you what the package is, it's accounting, business computer information systems, business, computer science, and mathematics.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to consider the accounting, business computer information systems, business computer science, and mathematics as a with the deletion of the Math 1325 as a prerequisite on the accounting course, which is page 2 of your packet. At this point, we can open the floor for any further discussion. Well, hearing none, does a committee member want to call the question? Okay, the question has been called. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? Thank you. The motion carries. Thank you, Jim Nelson, for you and your committee's hard work all this past year. This is Rebecca. Yeah. Rebecca Leslie is going to give us the staff report on the other courses that are in your packet, beginning with the anthropology, art, criminal justice, drama, theater, geology, and humanities.
Okay, I'm going to start with some comments about the process that we go through in developing the learning outcomes for the ACGM. In the spring or summer, we call for nominations for the work groups, and they are made up of faculty members, equal numbers from community colleges and universities. They will range in membership from 10 to 12, and they are experts or they are in the classroom teaching these courses. So we bring them together during the summer and they review the course descriptions and develop the learning outcomes. Once they're out for comment, their finished product of that first step in the process, then they respond to the comments. We send that back to the work groups and they respond to the comments that we get during that 30-day period. I will be speaking or representing anthropology, arts, and drama, and then I will call on my colleagues from the coordinating board, Ronald and Andrew, as well as Alan Mickey to do the other disciplines. Okay. Anthropology is the first group. There were very, very few comments, and the comments were general. There really weren't actionable items that the work group could make to the descriptions and the learning outcomes. So the anthropology section is as it was out to comment. There were no changes after the comment period. Do you want to take them by discipline for this group? Because other people will be speaking to them.
So can we get a motion on acceptance of the anthropology courses? Second. Got a motion and a second. All in favor of the recommendations of the anthropology courses signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. Thank you. Moving on.
Okay, the next section will be the arts. There were very few comments. There were a couple of changes, and it was mainly wordsmithing. So this is essentially the same as it was out for comment. And also note that we didn't do learning outcomes for the whole discipline. Not all the courses were developed with learning outcomes. What we look at is enrollments and how frequently they're transferred. We look at where the traffic is in transfer. Those are the ones that we're developing at this point. Hopefully, the less frequently trafficked or enrolled courses will get treatment too or be addressed. But just because of time constraints and resources, we just choose the courses that are transferred most frequently and have high enrollments.
Comments? Okay.
Is there a concern that the courses that are low in activity will eventually be deleted?
There is some concern. There was some concern expressed. That question came up, but we don't have. This committee will be making those kind of decisions. I don't think it's not on the agenda for today.
I realize that, but I was just wondering if there were you said there was very little comment. Were there any comments to the
No.
to that?
No, I did have a question about what about the other courses, and the answer I gave you is, the information I gave you is the answer I gave them.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Been properly moved in second. Any other discussion? Therefore, hearing none. All in favor of approving the arts discipline recommendation, please state by stating aye.
Aye.
All in favor, all opposed, same sign. Hearing none, we will move on to drama. We'll just skip those and let you do those.
Okay, the next group is drama or theater. And this was the same as with arts. There was very little comment and very little change. Essentially, this is what was out to comment. I think there were a couple that they actually added a suggested outcome. It was stagecraft. They added that third outcome based upon a comment that was made. They thought it improved the course, it improved what they had done, so the work group accepted that comment and added that third. But that was essentially the only change.
Any other comments? To accept?
I'll move to accept.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a motion and a second. Any other comments? All in favor of accepting the drama courses, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Drama has been approved. We won't come back. We won't come back. Go back to do all the ones. Come back to those courses.
Okay, I'm going to call on my colleagues. Andrew Lofters will speak to criminal justice courses.
Morning. Criminal justice met on August 2nd, and we developed learning outcomes for introduction to criminal justice, court systems, fundamentals of criminal law, correctional systems and practices, and police systems and practices. They were put up for public comment. We had 2 comments that were submitted. One of the comments was in agreement with what the work group had submitted for public comment. The other was to make an adjustment in the description for criminal justice 1306 court systems, and it was just a wordsmithing situation. We added one term. We substituted for criminal procedure. The work group suggested that we include court systems instead of criminal procedure on the description for 1306. It was accepted by the work group, and that's what you see in front of you today.
I move approval.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the criminal justice discipline? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Okay, motion carries for criminal justice.
Okay, next on the list is geology, and Reinl will present information about his work group activity.
Good morning. The geology work group had quite a few courses to work through. They looked at physical geology and historical geology, both for majors in geology. They looked at earth science for non-science majors 1 and 2. They looked at environmental geology and introduction to field geology. So it was a large work group with 12 members, and they met actually twice in person with overlapping membership and worked in between the meetings and before and after through email and SharePoint. There were quite a few comments coming out of the comment period, and the work group received it, as Rebecca said, and voted on, and we tabulated the votes on the outcome for these comments. And according to that, we changed one learning outcome, the last one for physical geology. It was quote unquote softened with agreement of the work group and the suggestion of the commenters. Another learning outcome was struck, that was for earth sciences for non-science majors 1. After looking it over, the work group agreed that that is really that learning outcome was part of Earth Sciences 2, and so it shouldn't be in Earth Sciences 1. Those changes are all reflected in the package you have in front of you. A couple other learning outcomes were clarified. For environmental geology, learning outcome 2 was clarified in that energy resources in plural was put in instead of just one resource. Also, 2 changes for the learning outcomes for introduction to field geology. For learning outcome number 2, it was added that students have to document the field data they collect or identify. And for learning outcome 3, map making was included as a basic technique that these students should learn. The majority of the comments, however, was for the change suggested by the work group for environmental geology. The work group suggested to rename that course to environmental sciences and cross-list it with environmental 1301/1101, environmental sciences 1. There were lots of comments to that change because commenters feared that what would mean that environmental geology would go away, quote unquote. And it was the intention of the work group to do exactly the opposite, to protect the enrollments in this course and make it suitable for student transfer. The work group observed that the course environmental geology at the 4-year institutions is upper division course and has prerequisites of chemistry, physics, and other geology courses. So staff looked at that, and where's my sheet? That's not it. 20 institutions teach environmental geology, and they're all in upper division. We found only 2 4-year institutions that teach environmental science or environmental geology as a freshman course, and both of those institutions don't have geology programs. So the main concern of the work group was that is a confusion between these two courses with the same name, environmental geology in the ACGM and environmental geology as taught at the four-year institution, and that the course in the ACGM is not able to be transferred by students, or students cannot transfer the course into the four-year institutions because of that. So they looked at the learning objectives at various institutions and community colleges, across the state, and saw that the content in environmental geology varied widely and included content from physical geology, environmental sciences, and earth sciences too. So their goal was to create learning outcomes for environmental geology that can also be used for environmental science, and rename the environmental geology course to environmental sciences. So the staff then looked at, furthermore, into the CIP classification of those courses. And all the geology courses which were looked at besides environmental geology have a CIP code falling into geology, with a two-digit CIP 40. Environmental geology and environmental sciences both have in the ACGM, a CIP code of 03 under environmental science. So to summarize, the work group suggests this change so that the course is usable at the community college for both geology majors or environmental science majors, or students who are not quite decided which track or which field they will follow through. Because as it stands, or is suggested, as it is suggested by the work group, that course could be used in the geology major as an elective and could be used as a program course in the environmental sciences program.
Ronald, I would ask that you speak to the field geology too. A bit of background information of what the work group was thinking on that.
Thank you. Field geology, as taught at the four-year institution, is also upper division course. It's typically sort of almost a capstone course for geologists, and but the idea from the work group was that an lower division field geology course could be quite useful if it serves as a sort of introduction to geology course. And it would be a good way for collaborations between two-year schools and four-year schools, in that they may collaborate between each other in giving this course. The lab portion was taken out of that, so it stands as proposed as a 3-semester credit hour course, because the majority of the course is going into the field. So taking a couple Saturdays a semester and going in the field and teaching those basic geology concepts.
I think also later on in our discussion we can look and see that the enrollments in the course are very low, but the change in it may improve those enrollments and make it a more effective course, recruiting course for maybe geology majors, kind of like you have intro to engineering. This could be a intro to geology type course. And I think that was part of their thinking.
Right, that's correct.
I move approval.
We have a motion and a second for the approval of the changes to the geology discipline. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries for the geology discipline.
Okay, finally, we have humanities, and that's Alan.
Hi, good morning. Hello, good morning. I'll address each of our proposed courses very briefly. For Humanities 1301 and 1302, Introduction to Humanities, Parts 1 and 2, the course description was tightened up but not substantially changed. The phrase standalone course was added in response to a public comment to clarify that Humanities 1302 has no prerequisites and does not necessarily build upon content covered in Humanities 1301. The learning outcomes are the same for both courses. The committee felt that by using the same description, teachers could follow either a chronological or a thematic structure that's appropriate to the course's nature as broad surveys of the discipline. Humanities 1305 is Introduction to Mexican American Studies. The course description was rewritten to emphasize the purposes and processes of Mexican American fine arts and their relationship to the value of the multicultural experience. The learning outcomes are designed to emphasize both formal elements of the visual and performing arts, as well as the ways in which they reflect shifting cultural identities. The description of Humanities 1315, Fine Arts Appreciation, was completely rewritten to clarify what is considered to be the visual and performing arts. There was a public comment that poetry should be added to the list, but the committee felt that poetry is not primarily a performance art, and the subject is already covered in English classes offered elsewhere in the core curriculum. Humanities 2319, American Minority Studies, adds a list of recommended topics to the course description: race, ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic class, sexual orientation, national origin, age, disability, and religion. The learning outcomes are tailored to emphasize issues unique to the course topic, such as group interactions in the United States, focusing on immigration and migration patterns, assimilation processes, adjustments to American life, and the shifting societal perceptions of minority group cultural identities. Humanities 2323, World Cultures, has been cross-listed with Anthropology 2346, General Anthropology. The committee felt that a humanities approach to the subject is inherently different from the social sciences approach, and that each use of the word cultures and each uses the word cultures in very different contexts. The committee therefore recommends removing the cross-listing with Anthropology 2346. To clarify the difference between the two courses, the committee rewrote the course description to remove the topics physical and cultural anthropology, archaeology, linguistics, and ethnology, and instead added the more humanities-oriented topics: cultural practices, social structures, religions, arts, and languages. The topics and learning outcomes are worded in such a way as to allow some crossover into anthropological approaches as the instructor sees fit. The other public comments that I've not already mentioned were mostly limited to small changes in wording and clarification of terms. Thanks.
Did you receive any comments in regards to the world cultures from the field? Those changes in taking out the cross-listing?
No, we didn't.
You didn't?
Not specifically related to the cross-listing with anthropology.
Sometimes those cross-listings create more confusion than they do benefit.
Yeah, they do. I was just wondering, since it had been there for such a long time, so.
The course that it's cross-listed with, that work group was anthropology. They did their own learning outcomes. So you're getting two sets of learning outcomes. So it makes sense to remove the cross-listing.
Go ahead.
Move approval.
We have a motion to approve the humanities discipline changes and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries for the humanities discipline.
We will move to item number 10 on the agenda. We have a staff report on the discussion of McClellan Community College's request to modify an existing ACGM course, Engineering 2308, Engineering Economics. Rebecca?
Okay. This is only a recommendation to, or a request that we change a prerequisite. They are not changing not requesting a change to the description or the learning outcomes. But because it is a modification, they went through the full process, which I hope you will look through the package of what is required of an institution making such a request. And McClellan did a very good job of documenting and getting the support they needed for this change. They did a survey of catalogs and as well, and then included the first two sheets in the package are what they fill out, what they complete, and then they included a cover letter with more information. Then they provide us with a page of what the course would look like. They're going to just wanting to strike that language about the prerequisite. The math prerequisite would stand, would remain, but the macro or micro would be removed as a prerequisite. Also, when you make a request to modify, you have to substantiate your request with support from four-year institutions, and McClellan has done that as well. If you will continue through the package, they have information returned from Lamar University, Tarleton State, Texas A&M Kingsville, Texas Tech, UTEP, and UT Arlington. And West Texas A&M. So they have these universities, and these participate in the transfer, voluntary transfer agreements, and they support this change in removing the prerequisite, in that it was just stacking requirements for students that it wasn't happening at the university level, and they didn't want to make create a hardship for community college students by requiring that prerequisite. And then they also include catalog pages substantiating what they put in their request. So as you read through there, I was really pleased that they did such a good job. It's very convincing, but it also is a good example of what's required to go through to make this kind of request and to make it reasonable, and that they are trying to help the students get through the pipeline as quickly and efficiently as possible.
We have a motion and a second to delete the prerequisite or co-requisites of principles of microeconomics or principles of macroeconomics from the Engineering 2308 Engineering Economics course. Any further discussion?
Just some background information for consideration by the committee. That course was brought into the academic course guide manual 2 tuning councils ago, as I recall, to get the students on a pathway into the upper division, industrial engineering predominantly, but also the electrical engineering field. There was a lot of discussion among the committee itself and the vertical alignment as well as the horizontal alignment as to what should the content of that course be. A overwhelming sense was that the student need to have some economic maturity prior to coming into the Engineering Economics 2308 course. That's where it was looked at the macro or microeconomics will begin to provide that maturity. The engineering economics in many ways builds upon a number of the principles that are in the macro or microeconomics, that those two courses are not a proper subset of each other. There's an intersection between the two courses, but they're not a proper subset of each other. Now, there is support within this package to drop that. The only thing I'd like to call to the committee's attention in considering that, and if I can draw an analogy to the accounting course that we just addressed, during the 30-day comment period, there were no comments regarding that prerequisite. It was accepted coming down through, unlike the 2301 that we just looked at. There's 2 or 3 statements made within McClellan's package, which I think are relevant for consideration by the committee. It is talking about putting the student onto a expeditious, financially, whatever words were used, pathway to a degree. That is important, but I think what is equally important is that macro or microeconomics both satisfy a part of the Texas Common Core curriculum, both within the existing core and what is going to be changed coming up in 2014. So, this course really serves 2 purposes in it. Will take care of part of the Texas Common Core. It also provides, in the views of the committee, the academic maturity coming into the engineering economic analysis, which is a little bit different beast. I think one thing which would need to be considered is at a particular university, and I don't know for certain the ones that are here, will that course satisfy that same component area of their core? If it is, it may be including things that are there. But the question is that true across the board? I think some further information in that regard would be beneficial. But again, during the starting 30-day comment period, when this was brought in, there were no comments received about this. It was fully supported. Thank you.
Rebecca, were there any, I know that the packet requires letters from the universities, but were there other comments? Did McClellan receive comments from other community colleges in the field?
Not that I'm aware of.
And I realize what you're saying, Jim, in regards that there were no other comments made during the period of time. But I think that when the 5 institutions say that it's not a requirement of their institutions, I think that that's also significant, that they're not requiring, although the tuning people have had those discussions, these universities are also saying that it's not necessarily a requirement. I do feel as though that if a student has some background personally, that it may help them. But if it's not a requirement of the institution, then I would, support the request of McClellan. But it would have been nice to also hear something from the other colleges, community colleges at the state. I don't know, those that are here that are representing community colleges have any input in regards to respect from your colleges as well.
My university was one of the ones that supported this, West Texas A&M, and Dr. Emily Hunt, who is the director of our engineering school, mentions the fact that they're concerned with ABET student outcomes, but particularly because they have a senior design capstone course that it helps make up for anything that's missing by that time. And so she is in favor of reducing the hours rather than increasing them. This course would not satisfy the core that we have sent forward for 2014. And so Dr. Hunt's feeling is that the economic prereqs are not necessarily needed for success.
I would just like to make a general comment, not so much about the specifics of this course, because I think prerequisites should always be guided by what students need. And if students don't need this prerequisite, I don't think we should put it on there, because we now have these legislative imperatives to keep our bachelor's degrees to 120, to keep our associate's degrees to 60, and for students not to take excess hours, lest they be charged out-of-state tuition. So I think we have to be extremely sensitive to that situation for students and only keep prerequisites or put prerequisites on courses where we have a clear pedagogical reason for doing so.
Any other comments? Do we have a motion?
Make a motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all that are in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. No opposed. Thank you. We have this just looks like, was it 12? 12. Yeah.
Okay. The next agenda item is number 12, which is the staff report.
They changed it.
And pending discussion on the ACGM course offerings and enrollments, and that will be Rebecca Leslie.
In your packet, you want to pull out this information right here, the spreadsheet. There are 1,165 courses in the ACGM. And this is showing you enrollments, and it's color-coded. The CTC enrollment is the first green column. That shows you statewide enrollment. That's how many, it's head count of students taking that course statewide. So if you look down at one, like Principles of Accounting, you have over 26,000 students statewide taking that course during fiscal year 2012. But go a little bit further to Agriculture 1311, statewide, 15 students took that course. The second column is the number of institutions offering the course. So there are over 70 community colleges. A large number of them offer the accounting. And in some cases, 0 or 1 or 2 will offer a course. The third column is university enrollment in those same courses. And the last column is universities offering the course, the number of institutions. Looking at both of those numbers are important because in the rules, it says that this committee will be looking at deleting courses that 3 or fewer community colleges offer. So anything in red is up for deletion or consideration of your recommending deletion. It doesn't mean you need to do that, but you need to be looking at it. Another parameter that we use on this committee is whenever we consider putting something into the ACGM, is that it has to transfer and apply to a degree major at 5 universities. So the green column or the yellow column under universities is showing 4 or fewer universities. So if you have a course that has a rainbow of colors all the way across, those may be problematic. Or that we need to take a closer look at. Sometimes it will just be a scheduling issue. There are some courses that are in there, thinking of sciences, that can be offered as a composite 4-hour course, or it can be offered as a 3-hour lecture and a 1-hour lab. That pattern of 3 and 1 is more often used at the university level than the community college level. So you may see fewer than 3 community colleges offering a 1-hour lab. But that doesn't mean we should delete that course, because there may be a few, and it is equivalent when taken with the lecture course to the 4-hour course. So you have to look at all of those that are kind of grouped together before you make a judgment about deleting those kind of courses that go together as a package. And it's a scheduling issue. But then there are cases where a course can be offered for 1, 2, and 3 hours and have the same learning outcomes. Those are probably problematic. How do you teach the same information in a 1-hour course as you teach in a 3? And sometimes it's 3, 4, and 5. And which pattern shows up most often in those cases? That's what we want to be looking at. So 1,165 is a lot to consider at one time, but the information is here, and it gives us a starting place to start thinking about these issues. And I'm going to turn.
We only have 1 year of data in your handout, and Sharon and myself and Rebecca had discussed the possibility of maybe setting up a future work day for us, and then maybe breaking this committee into a STEM group, a humanities group, a liberal arts group, and by your discipline, and then take a look at this to try to draft some recommendations sort of at that subcommittee level to this larger committee for the workday. I really don't think any of us have enough information. It's just been given to you to make any recommendations today. Yes. I think 3 years is probably a minimum that most of you would want to see, and that will, they'll take some time for the staff here at the coordinating board to pull together for us.
Also, I'd like to make a comment about the data here. As I pulled this out, there wasn't one report I could pull and just get that information. I had to match up. For community colleges, it's fairly straightforward. You track the course number. Because universities all have their different numbers, I had to look at 2 different CBM reports and have tech people put it together. And then when I kept digging deeper, I found that in some cases, universities, for whatever reason, will match a 3-hour course and say ours is equal to the 5-hour. And they won't say it's equal to the 3-hour. I don't understand that. I don't know why that's happening in the data. I would say that maybe 10% of these courses, as far as universities are concerned, there may be some variations that need to be corrected. I know that TCC&S has had the same problem of they're trying to communicate that they accept and transfer this course. What we're needing to know is, what do you actually offer, and how does that align? So we can see those patterns and make those calls that we need to make. So even though this is the first run, I want to do that kind of cleanup with the data, besides just give 3 more, give more years and then clean up the data too.
The data element for
I'll check with our, it may be that they can track just the course number, because they'll have the course number. They have the course number now they had it for this year, 2012. They'll have it for the next year. And they can go back. We'll connect. But, in Senate Bill 215 is where they said that universities have to report, and the coordinating board publishes this information. So we have more teeth as far as saying, monitoring, saying, let's get accurate here.
The other thing that we discussed was having the work session during the spring semester. So giving adequate time to try to dig for the information. But at that point, if we could have the work session, then a recommendation could come out of the work session for the next meeting in the next academic year. I think that would be the approach that we want to take. We need to spend some time ensuring that you have the data beforehand when you come to the work session so that we're thoroughly addressing it and then moving forward on that part. James, did you have a comment you want to make?
Yes, I was first going to suggest that the community college data is pretty exact because all the institutions use the Common Course Numbering System and report it. And whereas the university data, we probably need to take with a little bit of a grain of salt because that's self-reported, and sometimes this is what we take and transfer versus this is what we actually offer. So just keep that in mind as you look at that data. And one thing I was going to suggest, if the chairs are willing, is to go ahead and at least provisionally divide yourself up into groups now so that when Rebecca and I have the data, we could go ahead and email it to you whenever we get it, and you'd have between that time and whenever we actually meet at your own leisure to look through it and familiarize yourself. That way you wouldn't be getting the data just when the work group meeting occurs. Thanks.
So the recommendation was to have sciences or STEM, behavioral sciences or social sciences. How do you want the groups divided? What were the 3 areas that you mentioned?
Well, I've mentioned humanities and, say, fine arts, but we can divide these up however the committee would like it.
Anybody have any recommendations as to how we divide the groups? That would be 3: STEM, humanities, and fine arts. Think that will work? So who would like to volunteer for STEM? Okay, so I have David, Mary, Jim. James, I should say.
I have a question. Again, what will be included in STEM? Which of these topics?
I think that's to be determined, but primarily I think that we will need to look at the whole list and divide it up. But your common, when you would think about it, it would be your common course, your math courses, your science courses, the engineering courses.
Computer science.
Computer science, yeah. I would think that would. Those are only 3 that I have.
Gary down for science.
Yeah, Gary said. Did I have you down? Did you raise your hand?
Yeah, you could put me down for STEM.
Okay.
David.
Oh, yeah, I got David. Okay. Got 5. Yeah, I just threw it out to see what your thoughts were. So are you thinking that we should do a business category? Mm-hmm. Okay.
There's much fewer courses in that category. Yeah, there's very few.
They could go in with humanities or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very few courses. There's actually only 2 business courses. So.
Accounting. So you have a lot of courses there. Accounting, humanities. Yeah. Economics. You should have that in here.
And it's probably not as crucial for those courses that we've just adopted learning outcomes as it's for those others that we don't have as much
Okay, what about humanities? Got Melissa. Down the line there, Sandra. All three of you, did you raise your hands? Okay. Who else?
Trudy.
Trudy and Edgar.
Trudy.
Fine arts. Michael. Well, since it's only you, I'll join you on that one.
Great.
Okay. Going to do humanities, but you got 5 there.
Then it's the people who aren't here.
I do have a proxy.
We need a couple more people for fine arts, even though that might not be your background, but I guess we'll have to draft some people.
We can do that.
Okay.
You can toss me on fine arts.
Okay, Edgar, thank you.
I'll help with fine arts also, but I'm concerned about where we're going to put agriculture and home economics.
Like agriculture and STEM,
In
probably.
STEM, shall we put home economics with them also, or not?
That's where I would put it because.
Put it
More
with
of a
STEM? Well, I'll do the STEM
technical-
one because that's my area.
Okay, Jane.
Trying to think who's not here.
Let's look at the list.
Sharon, could you just read through that list one more time, please?
Sure. For STEM, I have David, Mary, James, Gary, Andy, and Jane. Humanities, I have Melissa, Trudy, Sandra, Edgar, and Shelby. In fine arts, I have Michael, Edgar, Jane, and myself. Committee list in front. We're missing.
Okay.
I just wanted to say really quick that you would have to contact Amanda Vasquez in my behalf because I'm just here in representation of her.
Amanda is in enrollment management, and so
Correct.
is Hassan Jamil. So they could probably have insights for any.
I'll put them with fine arts for right now.
Marcia Little is humanities, probably.
I'll let this be my...
Anybody else we're missing?
This is something. Oh, Tammy Wyatt from UTSA is not here, but she's also like Associate Dean of University College, so that she advises or talks about curriculum for beginning students in the University College. So she could go STEM or she could go humanities, or I would think that she advises for fine arts as well.
They're both pretty, they've got 6, well, we've got 5 here, so you can put her to humanities.
Get them all at 6.
Okay. Putting her in humanities. So we added Marcia Little and Tammy. I want to say Marcia.
Fine arts is still,
Fine arts is, well, no, I put Amanda and Jamil.
okay.
So we have 6.
And so, this is just an observation that when we were doing the learning outcomes, sometimes if you're in the discipline, you don't have as objective an outlook about whether or not a course needs to go away. So it may be good to kind of mix the groups a little bit.
We'll send a communication about the groups that you volunteered to, and then if you give some thought, you want to switch, then just, we'll have Rebecca to be the contact, and then she can let us know. So once you get back, I think that's an excellent point that she raised, because sometimes we do have our blinders on.
Well, I think we could liven the group for fine arts by presenting our recommendations in song in 3/4 time.
Put us on the spot, Jane. Okay.
Would have to draw one.
All right. I want to talk about the semester option.
Yeah. Next on our agenda is item 13, which is the staff report and pending discussion on the option of a 3-semester credit science course for non-majors with an integrated lab. Let Rebecca.
Okay, we've had a couple of inquiries from institutions about creating an integrated 3-hour course. In the past, this actually could be done, but as learning outcomes and courses are split and specific parameters of credit hour and contact hours, it's not possible for some of the courses. So I've had inquiries at the faculty level. Alamo College had an inquiry about the possibility of an integrated 3-hour course. And then Amarillo College has presented this, and we've had an ongoing dialogue with them about the possibility of doing this. And as well, the UEAC committee met last Friday, was it, James? That UEAC? 2 Fridays ago. And we already had this on our agenda. We were already planning on talking about it, but the same issue came up with UEAC. James informed them that it was on our agenda, and they agreed. It was an issue that needs to be seriously looked at, and so that's more, leaving it up and looking at the possibilities. And we're speaking to this only as non-major courses, that we wouldn't, the ones that are in core for your liberal arts majors or your fine arts majors, the possibility of still having a lab course, but not that it wouldn't have to necessarily be 3 hours. 4 hours. Yeah.
Now, we can table this if the group decides to. It's my understanding that this item is more about just putting some language in the ACGM that, in addition to the 4-credit-hour lab or the 3-credit-hour science class that may have the either required separate 1-hour lab or an optional separate 1-hour lab, you see that too, would just be to say that there is an option to offer a 3-credit-hour science course for non-majors that has the integrated lab.
I could give an example. Biology 1308, biology for non-science majors. And in the ACGM, we have in parentheses that this is a lecture course. We would just put language that it could be taught as a lecture or as an integrated lecture lab course. Then the course description could remain the same because we're talking about delivery, how the institution delivers the instruction. And then we would need to look at the contact hours to adjust it to be able to let them do a lab, the maximum. And that is maximum, so that if they were still wanting to keep it as a lecture, straight lecture, it would be within those parameters. And if they wanted to teach it as an integrated course, we would up the parameter enough that they could do that. And as I said, we were just looking at non-majors. The selection of those courses, not all of them say non-majors. We would need to, identify those courses.
James?
Question on that. Did UEAC register any kind of opinion on this other than that the issue should be considered? And who do they suggest should consider it? Did they want to consider the issue?
No,
or did
they
they
wanted
want
us
us
to
to take a look
consider
at it? Okay.
And I don't think that they did go strongly one way or the other. They just said it needed to be looked at.
I think this would be very helpful with the new core, because when we had to come up with our new core curriculum, and I'm sure you guys are the same, only having 6 hours for science, we ended up we're going to have to change our entire listings in the catalog to the 3 credit hour and the 1 hour in order to fit. So I can see this is very helpful for the non-majors. That way you don't have to worry about the extra 2 hours lab and where to put that.
And just another recommendation, this is also something that we could continue a dialogue with, in the spring semester, through a WebEx or something, conference phone call if it has to be. Because I do think that many of you, if with your new core, have gone through, the 8 to 6 hour on the natural science side was a dialogue on your campuses. But this is something that I believe that should go back to your campuses and be discussed, before we vote. And that's really why I was saying we could table it today, or we could just come to some kind of consensus that we're going to move forward with some kind of continue the dialogue.
James?
Don't want to monopolize the discussion here, but I think it really would be better if we push this to spring so that we could have some discussion about it. And, a couple of issues. I'm very much in favor of labs because it really pushes students to participation and to understanding concepts that they learn about in class. But there may be an issue at the 2-year institutions with lab space, because many of them are going to continue their 4-hour integrated courses and their 3+1 courses. So I think space consideration needs to be one of those things that people talk about, as well as the integrity of the course.
James?
I certainly like the idea of you guys taking this concept back to your campuses and discussing it, particularly with your science faculty, but also with perhaps a curriculum committee that came up with your new version of the core curriculum. I'm sure they'd be interested in hearing about this and might want to weigh in. So if you do vote to table this, I wanted to ask you, is there any data or information that we could provide to you committee members that would be helpful to assist you in leading the discussion on your home campuses?
I would think so. I think that if we had some data as to, especially community colleges, what options are they offering, how long, what's that enrollment been like? I was going to suggest that maybe if we could get a draft of a statement that would be sent to the committee for them to take back and address at their respective colleges to really lay out the issue, and so that we're all talking from the same, beginning from the same discussion point and being able to have that information. Not only the community colleges, but the 4-year institutions, and the sciences were a big issue when trying to address the 42-hour core. So we also made comment about it, and I reminded Rebecca that there was a comment in our minutes, if you recall, in regards to 3-hour versus 4-hour sciences, and we had hoped that there would be a group to look at that, and that didn't come to fruition. But we do need to talk about the acceptance of that credit and what happens when our students transfer to the 4-year institutions. It's always the question, well, they can teach it in 3 and we're teaching it in 4. What's the difference, and why do we need 4 and they only need 3? Well, they're doing 3 lecture and separating the lab out where we have it integrated. So there are a number of issues, faculty load issues and some other things that I think that we need to address as well. So, Rebecca, if we can work on a statement that can go out and to all of the committee members, and then we all start from the same point. What we discussed was possibly at our spring work session, taking the first few minutes to address this issue at that session, and then really working through the enrollment part at the other part of the session for that full day.
One part of data that really doesn't show up, but we can probably find, is what are universities doing? How many universities have this? You have to really dig into the catalogs, and it's not always easy to find if they're doing 3-in-1 or 2-in-1. But we could try to get that information as well. That would be helpful.
Is it a possibility to send just a simple questionnaire, like 2 or 3 questions, to the chief academic officer at the institution to ask them to respond what they're doing in teaching? I don't know how that works.
That would be helpful. That would be helpful.
You know, so
I think that asking for that kind of information is problematic for the coordinating board. I don't think that is our approach. I think we could draft a statement. The chairman and I could, work on a statement. What is the information we want? And then send it to the committee to have a dialogue with your faculty, get your feedback, and then look at other ways. But just a general throw out of request for information through there's so much more. This is just kind of a gray area. We're just kind of sorting out. We're not communicating definites. So I don't think that's what we want to do at this point.
I'd add that the coordinating board, on the advice of you folks from the institutions, is now trying to be very sensitive about information requests, because you already submit so much data to us, and we're always asking you to fill out this and fill out that and tell us about this. So we're now a little more reluctant to just sort of throw out surveys, and in fact, any survey that Rebecca and I tried to put together would have to be approved by an agency data collection committee, and that process takes a while. So I'd rather not go that route if we can obtain good data and information through other means.
Well, then if we could use the information that's available, but also coming from our college, though.
Oh, sure, and sure, we can.
It doesn't necessarily break it down in the lecture lab. I'll look at that, and I'll tell.
The credits are either 4.
We'll look at the data. We'll drill down, but that wouldn't be anything that we would necessarily need to send out as a credit. But just drill down in data here, if we can.
Okay, I would entertain a motion that we table the recommendation to the coordinating board and continue with the chairs of this committee working with Rebecca Leslie to draft a starting statement for us that will be sent to all the committee members so that we can take these back to our campuses and share them not just with our science and engineering faculty, but also with our core curriculum committee.
So move.
Second that.
Well, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Well, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes.
Okay, moving right along, item number 15, staff report and discussion of corrections to the course information in the ACGM. Rebecca, you have information in your packet.
Let me find that.
Yeah, you got it.
It's supplementary material for the agenda item 15.
Like this. Okay, this is just some cleanup. when you put something in a searchable database, things just show up that you don't expect. That's part of this issue, and also comments from the field as well. The first item on the cleanup is that actually it was Dallas County that brought us this issue, that for applied music, that this is individual instruction. The parameters say that you can offer a 3-hour course, but the contact hours do not provide enough contact to be able to do that at the community college level. So it had been in there for years like this. I don't know why. And all the community colleges were just offering 2-hour instruction, and I wasn't sure which way it needed to go. Do we need to lower the semester credit hours, or do we need to raise the contact hours? So I went to the experts, the discipline experts, and I had a dialogue with the TAMS, Texas Association of Schools of Music. And there, and the person that email dialogue was Robert Henry. He's from Texas Tech, very active, and I think he's the government liaison. And Jim Lee was also the executive director of that organization. And their answer to me was to change the maximum contact hours to 48. And this would allow for some majors like performance that they need that 3-hour course. They would be able to do that. So this is a correction aligning the semester credit hours with the contact hours for this generic course, which we don't have numbers for. We don't assign numbers through TCCNS, and but it is applied individual instruction.
Would you like to take each of these separately? Okay. Can I get a motion? All right. Good. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Okay, the next cleanup item is the course description for oceanography. At one point, and sometime long ago, oceanography, earth science, and meteorology were all together. They had the same description, so it made sense that it was written like this. They were split apart, and meteorology had its description changed, but oceanography did not. And this was brought to my attention by the geology work group, so we're just trying to clean that up and make the description survey of oceanography and related science, just parallel to what is meteorology.
In other words, we would delete physical and historical geology, astronomy, and meteorology from the course description. Well, we have a motion and a second to approve the change to the course description in oceanography to read Survey of Oceanography and Related Sciences. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay, number 3. Fundamentals of circuit analysis. These courses were updated, maybe even for the first time included in the ACGM, through the tuning process. That was 2010. 2011, they brought back 2 more circuit courses and said they're replacing these. That is on their material on our website, that these courses were deleted. However, I could not find it in the minutes, and they remained, for whatever reason, they remained in the book, or the manual. I'm just asking that the enrollments are really low, too. I think institutions were aware of this change. So I'm just asking that these be deleted, as it was thought that they already were.
Second.
Good. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Same sign. Ayes have it. Thank you.
Where are we on time?
What time is it?
Order 2?
No. Here, you want to break for lunch?
Sure. I'll start with the next item.
Okay. How long do we need? 30 minutes?
As long as y'all want.
30 minutes? I think that's...
Okay, go ahead. Yeah. Well, lunch is here, so I don't know if we need a motion on this or not. But the chairs have discussed and decided that this is a good time for us to take our lunch break. And after the lunch break, we'll come back to item 17 on the agenda.
Oh. Yeah, no, I forgot to do that. So let's make sure we do some housekeeping. The restrooms are out to the side door here. They're just down the hallway here. Out the door. Lunch is over in the table, so 30 minutes, and then we can come back. Oh, Mary has a question.
That's all right. May I speak?
Yes, go ahead.
We have a procedural question, frankly, with respect to the engineering economics course that now has a deleted prerequisite. What we have discovered is that when McLennan did their due diligence here, they did get these signatures on these different areas. However, what we've discovered is that, for example, like if you were to look at Lamar, and this is just a procedural question I just have for you all as we move forward with these, potential transfer compacts, because what's happened is that universities and community colleges across the state have signed the agreement for industrial and electrical engineering on the basis of this of engineering economics having this prerequisite. So their flow charts, their programs, and everything are now based upon that. Now, what McLennan did was to get the input of the universities that had signed on to the compact, but they did not, like as an example, for with Lamar, as you will see, and if you look at Lamar's, they have approval for the substitution in all but electrical engineering. So that will mean, I'm assuming, that we have to then change. We have to go back and then get them to approve. See, it's a hole here because the other the Lamar University agreed to accept the substitution for all but electrical engineering. So procedurally, as we move forward, after we have a statewide transfer compact, and then a couple of years later, we have an institution that does want to make a change. How do you want us to handle that? Because at this point, we have been criticized for making modifications to the memorandum of understanding once all the presidents have signed it, and then we make a little change to the MOU. So we've got to stop doing that, and we will definitely stop doing that. But if the problem continues, we're an institution. Anyway, I think you get the point. So how do you want us to proceed at this point if that now has been eliminated as a prereq and we have institutions across the state signing the agreement with respect to the way it was before?
So, Mary, are you referencing page 2 of 2 for Lamar and in the checkbox section?
Right. And there's a lot of them. This is just an example. So, for example, if you were to look at Texas Tech's,
well, can you stay on Lamar for a minute?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I can make sure that I'm following you appropriately.
Yeah, so say Lamar has signed the agreement for civil, electrical, industrial, and mechanical engineering.
Correct.
And they've all, and so they've listed here that the institution's major plan will accept the substitution for everything listed there, but you'll see that electrical is not listed. Okay, so that's one example.
All right.
And then when we go back, like for example, if you go to Texas Tech, if you look at Texas Tech, they've got the signature at the back here, but the issue is they did not check the little box that indicates which the modified course would be accepted as a major degree plan substitution for graduation requirement. Mm-hmm. So that's left completely blank. And they have they have across the board signed the agreement for civil, electrical, industrial, and mechanical. We were just looking at the prerequisite flowcharts and the programs, and both electrical and industrial have that as a prerequisite in their flowcharts. So that's going. I'm not really trying to advise the committee in any way. I just need to know how we need to proceed when a change is made that's now going to affect transfer compacts that have been signed across the board. If they don't actually indicate that that college, that university that signed the compact is agreed. So your help on this would be appreciated, because we're just about ready, frankly, to submit across the state the 12 compacts that have been agreed to by all, and this downloading for a Regents conference on Thursday of next week. So your help would be appreciated.
Normally, I would say that we need to have a structured protocol because of the fact that the tuning projects have been in place for about two or 3 years now.
Right. They actually started really with the mechanical engineering transfer compact in 2009.
Right. In 2009. So I'm just saying that we're just now hitting stride that these issues are coming up. We've not had those issues before. And when something like this, I would think that we would want to share it with the tuning in project people for their input on how this may affect the compact. But we don't have that kind of time right now from what you're presenting at this point in time.
Right. But I guess my concern is that we are utilizing a procedure that was in place prior to the work that's been being done for the last 5 years.
Right.
So my fear is that by, because you had already voted on that.
This, right.
So now we're scrambling to figure out how we need to handle it and how we need to communicate with all of the people that have already signed these compacts that have not agreed to the substitution.
With the number 1. Thoughts?
Of course.
Right. And
is it on all those compacts?
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it's not on all of them. It's on industrial and on electrical. And it's just exactly what April Andreas had written in her synopsis, and it looks reasonable in the paragraph when you read it, but when you go into each one of these documents, it is not checked off on which ones are going to be substituted. So, in fact, Arlington didn't sign that part either. So there's, while the forms are more or less there, that critical piece for us is not there.
Instead of checking, I'm sorry. sometimes instead of checking the box, the institution actually made
Comments.
Other recommendations and comments, and that's where they put that language saying they actually give their course number, or they say our course does not require this, so it's not a problem. You know, they identify their own course. That was true of Texas Tech.
Okay. I guess it would be helpful to us to know which institutions, because we've got the list of all the institutions that have signed the compact, and whether or not we now need to let the president of that institution know that this has now changed, and whether or not they want to sign the compact with a different agreement.
And let me make a suggestion. Since you've brought this issue to us, we're about to break for lunch. Let us read through this information.
Okay.
Take some time to read through, think it through. We're going to reconvene in 30 minutes.
Okay.
And then we can maybe have some other types of suggestions. I do agree that there needs to be some communication, but there are some different perspectives on what
Right,
should
I
occur.
understand.
So give us a chance
Sure, that's
to
fine.
kind of process
That's fine.
a little bit.
And I can leave you the list of institutions that are participating in the compact for those two disciplines, and that way then you could perhaps find out whether or not they have agreed to this substitution.
And could we, I know you all are meeting up somewhere.
Right,
upstairs
we've
or
got a meeting in just about 5 minutes.
So could we possibly come and get one of you when we get ready
Oh, that'd
to
be fine.
address that
That'd be fine.
the issue?
I'll be right down the hall in the
Okay.
Lone Star room.
So let us kind of read through all of the
Okay.
documents, think about it, have a little bit of discussion, and come
Great,
back.
and then I'll go ahead and submit this into the formal record. This document, it says as of April 29th, it is still up to date because the universities that are listed have not changed. And but you also will see then the community colleges across the state that have also signed the compact and also have. So my other fear is that even though McLennan submitted this on the behalf of the universities, there are 63 community college districts that also have signed the compact with the way that it is structured now. So I'll leave you both the Annex B, which is essentially the 12 compacts that we have now, and a list of the institutions that have signed those. And then, not to confuse you, but the ones that we just finished are the ones that you just, and so we won't have any signatures on those, but this course won't affect that because it's business and math and MIS and CIS. So anyway, if I can submit this formally to you, Madam Chair? Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Is that acceptable to everyone, my recommendation? And just kind of let us read through everything and think about it. And you heard Jim's comments earlier in regards to the macro course, that the tuning in project committees felt as though that it was important, but we decided to do something differently. So I think we just need some time to really read through everything. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that said, 30 minutes for lunch.
Yeah.
To ask that the committee reconvene. Thank you very much for taking time and for the coordinating board staff for making arrangements for us to have lunch in-house. So thank you very much to BJ and all of the staff. First, I'd like to, something that we forgot to do this morning, we really wanted to make sure that everybody is aware of who's all in the room. And I wanted to acknowledge Suzanne Carter, who's also here from with TENS, TCCNS. And so she was working with Vanessa as well. So sorry about that earlier, Suzanne, but glad that you're here. We're going to move forward, and before we broke for lunch, you all are aware of the concern that was brought from the Tuning In Committee in regards to the decision that we made in support of the request from McClellan Community College regarding the engineering economics course to modify that particular course, which was approved. I want to take a few minutes, if we can, to have some discussion, to get some feedback from the committee members. Had a little bit of time to process basically what has occurred in their question to this particular committee. So I just wanted to open up the floor for discussion on this item. James?
Sure, and I understand Mary's concern. I'm afraid, we've kind of created a little bit of a mess here that we need to talk about. But I'm also somewhat confused because when you look at those letters and the memos submitted by the various colleges, which were signatories, it doesn't appear that they're requiring the economics. So, what really holds this compact together if people are out there doing their own thing anyway? So maybe we haven't created as much of a mess as it seems like we might have. I still feel uneasy that we've impinged on that compact group, but I don't think we've caused it great damage.
Okay.
And the comment that I was talking with Sandra about is that I know the compact has been ongoing, but perhaps it didn't take into consideration the changes that were mandated in the core. And these colleges are responding to that as well, and the concern for a number of hours in the degree. And so I think we need to look at the big picture. Are we really hurting the compact, just like James has said? Or are we making something more useful for our students to be successful?
But yeah, I want to agree with the comments so far. Also, I want to point out it's a brand new course. And so I feel like whatever damage is pretty minimal at this point. So I think that's about, but I do think it is important to come up with a procedure that might be worthwhile in the future, something, maybe a step-by-step process that other changes might also take into account any compacts that might be impacted.
Or at least some notification or something that they can review that information. Michael, did you have something? No. You were positioning like you were getting me.
That's me thinking.
Oh, okay. Okay, so the sense that I'm getting from the committee is that we will have our decision to stand as is, in that our recommendation to the tuning committee would be to communicate with those colleges that are affected, and they do with the decision in regards to that course regarding prerequisite as is. Andy was talking earlier, and he was mentioning this won't be the first time. There will be other changes that they will have to make in regards to the MOU and what's happening there. So I think since it's still relatively new and all the pieces coming together, I think it's something that we will look forward to. Okay. All right. With that decision, I guess we'll communicate with Mary that what we've determined the best way to do that. And not reversing our decision, and suggesting that they communicate with those institutions that are affected in regards to the course as a prerequisite for the, the engineering programs, MOUs, that they need to make that communication, do whatever they need to do in order to ensure that people are aware. Okay. Moving on.
Our next agenda item is item 17, discussion of a recommendation to add college algebra as a prerequisite for pre-calculus. It's the last item in your packet. And would you like to say something, Rebecca?
Okay. You want to look at this agenda item? And it's a couple of emails, but it tells a story. And if you look on the second page, this is an email that I sent to various organizations because of a dialogue that was going on within the coordinating board about different issues. one of the issues was the new math waste project, and other issues were comments about, actually, this was from the field, asking about prerequisites for math courses. So I took both of those issues that there was ongoing dialogue or inquiry about and created this message to the experts in the field or the people in the classrooms. And it was the MAA, which has community colleges and universities in it. That's the Texas section of that. Then the TAAMS that's the department heads, community college and universities. And then TexMatic, which is two-year colleges, mathematicians, and also the tuning group, math tuning group. So the email went out, and that's what you're seeing there. I asked them to comment about the new Math Waste project, and then also gave them the link to the ACGM and look at prerequisites. Are we lining up prerequisites right? And so Cynthia Martinez actually was representing TAMS and TexMatic. I did get a few comments, not just a whole lot, but she represented both of those groups, and she's also a member of MAA. And she brought back the recommendations from TAM. And their only actionable recommendation was that we put a prerequisite on pre-calculus of college algebra. And that's what this agenda item is. Do we need to put that prerequisite? And that's what the math teachers are recommending.
My institution, this is already a prereq on pre-calculus. So my question is there an institution represented here today that college algebra is not a prerequisite for pre-calculus?
Requisite too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well. Yes.
I'll make that.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to add college algebra as a prerequisite for pre-calculus in the ACGM. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Housekeeping.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, it looks, a couple of questions I want to ask, and I also want to make an offer, which is, since we kind of unexpectedly have time here at the end of the agenda, that we could also just kind of throw it open to the members. If you have any questions about things, particularly things that have changed, we had a lot of new legislation passed this last session, and as a result, we've had a lot of new rules and new procedures. So, for instance, if you wanted to ask about dual credit funding, if you wanted to ask about the new core curriculum, if you wanted to ask about the 60 or 120-hour rules, or any of these other kind of hot topics right now, I'd certainly be happy to give you some of my time, and I think my colleagues would as well. If you just wanted to do a little Q&A, we'd be happy to have a discussion. In the meantime, though, I want to ask, does the committee want to have separate workday and meeting days, or do you want to try to combine them? In other words, we've got this big project that we're going to get together, subgroups, and do some work on this. Do you want to say, have that inclusive of a meeting where we'd all meet, we'd break into the subgroups during the morning, you'd deliberate, you'd look over the data, you'd discuss, and then maybe in the afternoon come back to the committee of the whole? Is that kind of how you'd like to imagine it? I think that logistically that'd be much easier on you guys and on us rather than having separate days to meet and discuss and then bring it to the committee. Okay, great. Rebecca, let's just go ahead and plan on it that way. As far as the date for the next meeting, we Often, in the past, not always, but often, we've somewhat arranged that to not be too far from the spring TACRO meeting, partially because that's when the Texas Common Course Numbering System Board meets, is usually at the TACRO meetings. They have a board meeting there. Vanessa, do you have a sense of when the spring TCCNS board meeting is going to be? Second or third week of April. Okay. That would then put us into May to meet. Why? Because the end of April is a board meeting, so we'd have to at least wait until after the board meeting. I'm not sure, I don't have a calendar in front of me, so that either mean the last few days in April after the board meeting or maybe that first week in May.
Or the last week in March, we're going to meet before.
We want to meet before. That's true. That's true. We could do that. Any general thoughts about the end of March versus the end of April / beginning of May? Okay. And that seems to be a consensus. Okay. Okay, Rebecca, let's roughly plan on sometime around that last week of March. And what we'll do, as we always do, is we'll probably select a range of dates there, and we'll send out a poll to all of you and just ask you to pick all the dates you could attend, and that way we'll just pick the day that the most people can attend.
Let's check with our chairmen that sometimes it's really critical that they
I'm committed here.
You're
that's not a
committed in
good
the
20th
20th
to
and
the
21st.
22nd. But,
I'm
fine the
committed
whole
in
week.
here somewhere, but I can make something. I
So we
have
could
another
find
commitment.
2 or 3 dates in there. Okay.
Or what about the first week in April? Is that a bad time? That's
The 31st through the 5th.
That's a bad time.
How does the first week in April?
That should be feasible. Yeah, let's aim for that. We'll have a range of dates at the end of March and the beginning of April in consultation with our co-chairs.
That would be a couple of weeks before
The board meeting.
the high activity level.
Yeah, and I can
Board
try to see what I can make this work in the last week of March, but that'll
Okay,
be fine.
that window of
Yeah,
2
it'll work.
weeks there will
To follow up on if you're through with the housekeeping, I have a question that I don't know if it's of interest to everyone, but with the new House Bill 5, I was asking Rebecca in regards to, has there been conversation here about that college readiness course that we have to, or it was really, the bill was a directive to the high schools to create a college readiness course for students that may not pass the TEKS, STARS, Texas Assessment Test, or whatever the case may be, and to partner with their institution, higher education institutions. So have you had some conversations with TEA, other colleges? What's the status on something like that?
Yeah, sure. Yes, this is a topic of some concern to us, and I know it's of concern to you guys as well, particularly the community colleges, because you're specifically mentioned that you're supposed to collaborate with the ISDs in the construction of those courses. And what exactly are they? The bill's a little confusing. If you read through it, at some places it sounds like it's kind of a developmental type course, but then other places it says you could offer it for dual credit, and we all know that you cannot offer dual credit developmental courses. It's just, it's a contradiction in terms, right? By definition, a dual credit course is a college level course. By definition, a developmental course is not a college level course. So how do we reconcile that? We have had some talks with the TEA, and they feel that it is essentially a local decision, and they are not going to be closely involved in this. That's where we left it with them. However, we, the coordinating board, staff, have had numerous meetings and discussions. Several of us here, myself, Andrew Lofters, Kristen Kramer from the P16 division, Julie Eklund from the Planning and Accountability division, we've met and put our heads together. And what First of all, what we want to do is try to develop some guidelines for this, basically some advice, because we don't clearly have rulemaking authority here, I don't believe, do we? Yeah, we don't have clear rulemaking authority, so the best we can do is just kind of give you hints, advice. And first of all, we want to make sure, we're all agreed on this, that we believe that those courses should be based upon the college and career readiness standards. That's one thing that we all felt firmly about, and no one disagreed with that. We're also thinking, Andrew, do you want to pick this up a little bit? Help me out here. We don't have any firm recommendations yet, but we do want to develop some. And what else have we been discussing?
Well, we've been discussing how this program might be structured so that it was possible that you could take a student from a developmental type of a setting in the first semester, have that student test and possibly become college ready for the second semester, and then have a dual credit class in the second semester, so therefore they can actually get dual credit for it. If the student would, and these were just ideas that we put out as a structure for the course. If they didn't test, say for instance on a TSI instrument during the second semester as college ready, then it was our idea that the institutions of higher education could provide to the secondary school, because according to the bill that the course must be taught at the high school or through a distance ed means.
Right.
We were thinking that maybe the institution of higher education, the partnering institution for the second semester of the course, could provide developmental education in whatever type of course that student was enrolled, either be it language arts or English or math. They're only going to be in those two areas. Give them the developmental materials for that second semester, so at least you know that that student has had exposure to your developmental materials that you already have control over at your institution. Because according to the bill, when the student has successful completion, and I've been getting calls about this a lot, especially from the dual credit standpoint. The bill says upon successful completion, they may enter into the partnering institution basically as TSI, demonstrating TSI readiness, and they can enroll in that first freshman level class. The part that's going to be needed to be worked out between the institution of higher education and the secondary school will be successful completion, that definition. What are you going to define as the successful completion, and what does that look like? At this present moment, we don't have, as James says, we don't have rulemaking authority. This is basically something that's going to be worked out between the IHE and the secondary school. It's hard for me not to just take over, because that's what I want. I would like to make recommendations. I think that we need to give institutions of higher education an idea of what to do, but we can't prescribe what you do. I hope I gave you somewhat of an idea of what I was thinking.
I think that's a pretty good summary of our deliberations so far, which is that we're going to try to develop some advice along the lines that we've just described, and I hope we'll have something either by the end of this year or very early in January. That's our goal.
I would just like to make a comment that it's very difficult that they think that just one course is going to do it when we are already dealing with our own students in developmental courses and levels and things of that nature, and you're going to give them a test and give them one course, and you've got a span of different skill levels as what's necessary for those students. They're just presuming that they're already going to be ready to be able to. It's just going to take a little bit for them to get into, to become college level ready. And that's where I see the fallacy of this particular bill, just making that type of assumption. So,
right. If it was easy to get students college ready through a single course, wouldn't all of our lives be so much easier?
Right.
Yeah. It's a tough call. So we'll try to get you something in more detail as soon as we can.
Maybe this isn't polite to say, but it's actually worse than that, because the high schools are supposed to pre-select the students who they don't think will pass a test that makes them college ready, and then we're supposed to provide them curriculum that makes them college ready. Am I misunderstanding the rule or what it says they're supposed to do? The course is designed for students who they don't think will pass the TSI STAR test, isn't it?
Well, the way the bill's written is for students who have not demonstrated college readiness, either through coursework, either through lack of successful passing of the end of course exams, or a student who has already not performed successfully on a college readiness measure. And that could be TSI, could be PSAT, could be ACT, whatever. They've already demonstrated that they weren't college ready. It's not that they thought they would. Mm-hmm. Right. That gives you.
You're taking the student with most difficult pathway. So you're taking the student with the most difficult pathway, and now we're trying to combine the curriculum and then find an assessment measure that allows us to say that the test that they were already taking that they didn't pass was invalid, and we've taught them something else that they are now prepared for college. And that is a difficult row to hoe, but we'll do the best that we can with it.
And even more than that, the bill specifies that once they've completed the developmental education course that the high school's providing, but maybe you gave them the curriculum for, you can't test them again. Now they are expected to go directly into college-level courses. That seems a path that is wrought with difficulty, I think is the best way to put it. Difficulty on everyone's part, on the ISD's part, on the college's part, on the student's part. Okay, other questions, perhaps, other topics that you might have in mind? Sure. We've got, basically we have it arranged so that one staff member, one program director is responsible for a component area. And that way, essentially the same person is looking at your communication, everyone's communication component area is being reviewed by a single person to give them a statewide perspective so that, one person doesn't judge your choices based on their interpretation criteria, and then someone else has a different interpretation and they're judging her choices. We hope this method will work out well. So far, it seems to be working well. Some of the early submitters have now had their entire curricula do that first run. That's the first review. Then there's a second review, which is done at the supervisory level by either myself or my colleague Reinhold Cornelius or the other person on the core curriculum, Dr. Melinda Valdez Ellis. So that person might look through all the selections, maybe call a few things into question, or might say, "Oh yeah, this all looks good to me." Once that person signs off, then we have a third and final sign off. And currently, that's our interim assistant commissioner, Dr. Stacy Silverman. But very soon, that will be our new assistant commissioner, Dr. Rex Peebles, making that call. And once that happens, then basically we're going to generate a letter that'll be an approval letter, and we'll send that out to you guys. Reinhold's most directly overseeing this process. Reinhold, did you want to add anything?
I understand that the first 2 or 3 letters should go out very soon. So there was a sort of a pilot group, and they went through, and it's still being worked out how that letter actually goes off. But since the deadline for submission is the end of November, everything will start rolling very quickly. However, I heard also that there are quite a few institutions who have not yet gone through the access, the physical access to the system, and that causes concern because that is not a one hour or 1 day issue, because you have to get permission to the CBID and then to the core side. And there are several people involved, and so if you know an institution hasn't gotten the access to the site, please do it now to get that out of the way.
I have a question in regards to the submission process. Once the documents are submitted, what is your estimation time on when an institution may hear or receive their letter?
Well, there's a date we set for, I think, February. If that will all come towards the end, or if we can manage to make it into a more orderly process, I don't know yet, because we don't really know. We have no experience how long it will take staff to look at this. And staff looking at your course submission may contact the institutions with questions. They may say, we look at your syllabi and we don't see any mentioning of teamwork. And so then they get back with the institutions in person. So we have no idea how that will work out, case by case.
So right now we don't know, but we're looking at, it said in one of the presentations, February of 2014.
Right.
And I guess one of the concerns that I know my district has is as we prepare for the catalog and registration for the 2014 fall semester, it's getting pretty late for us in order to make sure our programming and everything is done in our system. So that's why I was just asking. I know, I know it's new, and I was just wondering what the estimation was.
We are having in the system, we know when institutions submitted, and basically staff goes down the line according to that.
Right.
So the chances if you submitted it earlier is that if there are no issues, that you get done earlier. But there are many variables, you know. A certain issue may hold it up. But we try to get that done as smoothly as possibly, of course.
It's possible that one program director reviewing one area, like cultural, language, and philosophy, may find a course that doesn't fit the objectives, and it will be denied, but that doesn't hold up the approval of the whole section. You may disapprove one course, but you would get feedback from the coordinating board from that program director saying, okay, can you provide me more information? Okay. So that's an ongoing process right now.
The 60-hour rule that has been quite a bit of discussion on, and I know in some of our allied health programs where we have external accreditation, there's a lot of concern about taking a nursing program that currently is at 72 semester credit hours down to 60. And I have seen that some institutions have done that. How are they getting their 15 hours of general ed in as required by SACS on those Associate of Applied Science degrees, the ones that I have seen? I don't see, I mean, it's a stretch to me as I look at that to say, yeah, I've got 15 hours of general ed requirements in here as dictated by SACS in this 60-hour program. Can you comment on anything on that?
I can comment. I can't comment directly because I haven't seen any of the nursing curricula specifically, but I'm well aware that it is an issue in nursing, also in respiratory care therapist and other areas where there's a professional licensing or accrediting body. I can tell you that in internal discussions, what part of what we've envisioned when we've discussed it is to start with data. Right? That will start by working with you institutions, first by providing you with data. You know what your own programs are, but you may not know what the state average is. You may not know what hour requirements your neighbors have for specific programs. So Reinhold and I are going to work with our program inventory specialist, Emma, and she's going to work up a beautiful spreadsheet for us that will have different tabs on it. And, included in those tabs, and I'm not quite sure the organization, will be information like, okay, we'll have all the SIP codes for all the AAS programs broken down, and you can see by SIP code what the state average is, and on maybe a separate tab we might have the data for every single program in the state in, say, respiratory care. There's the hour, so you could see what all the range is of all the different data points for that. We hope that then we could invite a discussion, maybe putting together some work groups. Either we might put them together, maybe you guys might put them together, maybe we would tack this on to the WECM revision process, because people there come from discipline areas, and those are already there's already a process for forming those groups. And we might, want to ask or get some advice from some of the people in the programs. Okay, what's realistic? Here's the state average. So for all you programs that are over that average, why would you need more? And for you, those that are at the bottom of the average, are you sure that you're addressing everything that needs to be addressed because you're well below the average? Having that kind of discussion at the appropriate levels would give us some input, so that then we could get a sense of what's realistic for us to expect in these specific areas like nursing. Is it appropriate to aim for the average, a little lower than that, a little higher than that? Those are the questions we want to consider. I think Reinhold has some commentary too, please.
Yes, the Undergraduate Education Advisory Committee also discussed that in detail, and they actually are planning to do some subcommittee work group type meetings to look at different types of fields where there may be need for these exemptions, as it would be in nursing or engineering. And so they want to look at that. Generally speaking, though, it's a parallel issue to the 120 semester credit hour issue, which has been playing out for several years now. That we would expect that the exceptions are really bound to certain fields where there are licensures issues or other such things, and that the other fields will work themselves towards that goal, just like the four-year institution did with 120 credit hours. The number of programs that are now above 120 semester credit hours is vastly reduced from what it used to be. And so we expect that the same, in parallel, basically, can be done with the associate's degrees.
Right. In practice, this probably, like the 120-hour situation, will play itself out in stages or waves. We'll come together, and you guys will. We'll send out that information, that kind of spreadsheet that I just described, and then you guys will do sort of a first take round, and you'll just do all the low-hanging fruit. Okay, here are the areas we can easily trim down this, and this. Okay, these others are tougher. We're going to have to spend more time thinking about that. So maybe in the first year, you trim down, half of those that are above that mark, or 3/4, or whatever it is. You trim down a bunch of them, the ones that it's not controversial, even your own staff in that area can easily see, okay, here are the things we can easily trim out. We're not worried about losing any licensure accreditation. And then maybe with the help of some work groups from institutions across the state, then we might spend a little more time, another 6 or 9 months deliberating and discussing what are the appropriate semester credit hour thresholds for those disciplines that are stickier, like nursing, let's say. And we get some input, and then we issue maybe some recommendations or some guidelines to institutions, and then we say, okay, now that you have these guidelines for these more difficult areas, please reduce these. Tell us how you're reducing them, when you're going to reduce them, what you're going to reduce them down to. And then we look at it again, and we say, okay, well, look, if we get it close to the same percentage of compliance that we get for the bachelor's degrees, then we know that we're in pretty good shape, right? Because like the bachelor's degree situation, we know that there will be exceptions based on licensure and accreditation. We all recognize, for instance, that architecture degrees are lengthy, they're complicated, they have national standards to adhere to, and they're never going to be a flat 120, but maybe they could still get closer to that. So in some cases, reach the standard. In other places, it's get as close as you can to the standard. Is that enough to go on?
Have you received any applications from colleges that have done the preliminary work and are asking for extension, exceptions on that?
No, we haven't. What we have had is a few institutions just voluntarily reducing hours in curricula, and I think that's the low-hanging fruit I was talking about earlier. They're hitting the easy parts earliest, and I encourage you to go to your campus and do the same thing. It helps us as a higher education community show good faith compliance. That as soon as we could, we started making changes where we could, and then we moved on to the more difficult areas.
James, could I ask a question about dual credit? At my own institution, in analyzing the freshman class, the average amount of dual credit brought in per student was 16 hours. So what is the trend statewide?
I think the average semester credit hours taken are much lower than that. I think the average is only about 6. It's something on that order, and my friend and colleague Julie Eklund from Planning and Accountability really has a lot of this data at her fingertips. However, the statewide trend is not so much a whole bunch of hours, it's the ever-increasing enrollments. If I were to make sort of a graph of dual credit enrollments since 2000, 2001, when we first started keeping track of them, it would show an almost interrupted incline upwards at a pretty good steep slope. We had 1 year where we had a dip a couple of years ago. That was still a relatively small dip, and then it started going back up again. So what we're seeing is that dual credit is here. It's probably here to stay. Parents love it. Students love it. I think the challenge is getting students to take the right dual credit courses. That's the real challenge. It's hard for us, the higher education community, to get enough of the word about what to take down into the high school counselor level, to the everyday high school environment, because I think people at colleges, universities, certainly in admissions offices and people that give guidance, whether they're faculty or whoever they are, they're well aware of these issues. But for parents and for students, it's like we're speaking a foreign language to them. We have to say, oh, well, your best bet is to take hours in the core curriculum. What's that? Now we have to explain to them what the core curriculum is and what things in that core curriculum would probably be best for them to take, right? Well, your best bet is to fill out, your communication area first. That's almost universal. Virtually every community college university has, freshman comp in there. That's easy to do. Math, well, you'd think that'd be easy, but that's actually a little trickier, isn't it? Because then the student needs to know, are they going to be a STEM major or not? Well, that's a big branching pathway, right? If they go down the wrong path, they've got to seriously backtrack and then go forward again, so we don't want to lead them down the wrong way there. The same with the science courses. It's the same issue. If you take the non-science major versions because you want the easy grade, but then later you decide you want to major in biology, well, you didn't exactly do yourself a favor. It's difficult to explain all these nuances to high school students. It's even more difficult to explain it in a short enough document or module that they will actually pay attention to it and not tune it out after 10 seconds, because that's how long their attention spans are. So we've talked about this at the board, and we're trying to think about how to give better guidance, what the appropriate format for that is. And I think when the rubber meets the road, we're still largely relying on a combination of the high school counselors and also the guidance that you institutions provide to these students to get the word out. It's one of those situations where it's certainly obvious to everyone that this is not optimal, but we're also, no one has stepped forward and suggested the easy and obvious pathway for communicating this information efficiently and effectively to an ever-rotating crop of high school students that keep coming down the line.
My other question was, I looked with great interest on some data that was sent out in September, and I know there's a work group working on identifying first college level courses. And anybody that's looked at that data on what had been submitted in the fall of 12 as first college level courses, I think were probably somewhat surprised. I know I was. My question is, when we define first college level course, it appears to me that from a momentum point standpoint, as it's going to impact our funding, that we're talking just about the only place I understand that we're using that data is to identify for this momentum funding what the success rate of those students that are coming out of our developmental and going into that first college level course. Is that true? I mean, am I defining first college level course correctly in terms of putting it in context of for the students coming out of developmental? Because I mean, as I look at that deal, I mean, I see college algebra, I see trig, I see calculus. You can't tell me that a student's going to leave developmental and go into trig, which you can't even do that because college algebra is a prereq. You know, they're not going to go into, you know, or I see dance as a first college level reading course, that they're coming out of developmental reading and we're going to put them in a dance course. That's where they need to be. Okay, so.
Yeah, I see your point. I don't think it relates entirely to students coming out of developmental ed. I actually think it's a little broader than that. However, this isn't my area of policy. This is being handled by the Planning and Accountability Division. Julie Eklund, who I mentioned before, and one of her staff, Jana, are leading this issue. So I'm a little reluctant to hold forth because I'll admit it's not something that I'm intimately involved with. And they've updated me and they've invited me to some of the meetings and I've participated in some of the discussions. But I don't have a firm grasp on it, except that I'll say I don't think it is strictly limited to students coming out of developmental ed. I think there's a provision that allows for you, the institution, to get credit for a completion of first college level courses, even if the students haven't gone through developmental ed. That's and that's, I believe, why those courses like trig and pre-calculus or calculus are there, because some students will place into those courses, and that will be their first college level math course. So that's why I'm under that impression. I think it is a little broader than that, but that's about all I feel comfortable in saying. I'm sorry.
Well, you know, and as we've looked at the data that's being reported, and I know it's not being used for funding issues yet, but we've got to understand, I mean, people need to understand that data is relatively useless right now because we're not on an even playing field. When we're all coding on our CBM reports different courses as first college level, then that data that's being reported in terms of developmental ed success in first college level course, I don't think you can't use it as comparative data.
You're right, and we've heard this before, and that's one of the reasons why we're having these meetings and attempting to bring a little more clarification and standardization to what this list of first college level courses are. So that's exactly where the effort is coming from.
I know this is not your area, but do you have any information on the status of ABE and what might be happening there for the next year? I know that they were still working on it.
I know there are some new developments coming down the line. I'm trying to think. Certainly, the advent of the new TSI exam with its ability to diagnose ABE students is a huge leap forward that's going to result in a lot of procedure and policy changes. I think it's probably most useful for you community colleges that are also ABE providers. I'm a little less clear, and you know, if I worked in the P16 division, I would probably know, or I should know, what the plan is for you community colleges that get a bunch of ABE students, which are not ABE providers. So you know, you've diagnosed this student, and I've got a list of students, and they need adult basic ed instruction. We do not have the money or resources to provide that instruction. That puts you in a bind, because ABE is actually one of those 10 or 12 things that you are required by law to do, right? There's that long list in statute of community college should do this, 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 and this. That's on that list. And your open enrollment institutions, and it's also just part of your ethos, right? You guys are we take everybody. We're trying to help everybody that comes to us. Every adult that needs education, we're going to try to help them if we can. So I'm not sure if the plan is that you would then refer them to a community provider or some other, because it's not just colleges, it's also school districts and community-based organizations that provide this instruction. Again, I could see some logistical difficulties there, though, because what if you're in a small, rural sort of place and the nearest funded ABE provider is 60 miles away? Well, that's probably not going to be very helpful for that particular student, particularly if they don't have transportation. So I can see a lot of logistical issues still arising. Overall, for the state, it's going to be a great thing because of the better identification of students and the better sorting of them so that they can go where they really need to go when those varied services can be provided. So if nothing else, it's going to reduce the use of developmental education hours to attempt to remediate adult basic education students. Because I can't help but imagine that that is a diminishing return. Sure, it's better than nothing probably for them to get some kind of instruction, but if that instruction is still pitched at too high a level, if it's pitched at the junior or senior high school level, but these people are reading on a 5th grade level, then maybe that developmental education just isn't going to do them much good, in which case, that's a cost-benefit sort of question there, right? We're using local and state taxpayer funds at community college to try to provide instruction to these people, but if they're not benefiting, then we're essentially wasting public money, or at least not utilizing it as effectively as we could or should. And I think that becomes an important question for us as a higher education community to try to answer is what are we going to do to help these people? And how can we try to get them to the right services at the right time to help them so that then once they get that adult basic education instruction, they can come back to our college and start taking college courses of some kind.
Does nobody else think it's ironic that talking about adult basic education, too many developmental education courses, and yet same 5th grade reading people in high school in one semester, you're supposed to get them college ready? How can...
yeah.
No, you're right. Sometimes we in higher ed are like Sisyphus. We're going to roll that rock up the hill. It's going to roll back down and crush us, and then we're going to get back up and try to push the rock again.
I just have a simple question, actually, and I don't know, not necessarily to the whole group, but I know last fall when we met, there was talk about approving a Philosophy 13XX critical thinking course, and when I last looked in the ACGM, I couldn't find it, so I just want to know what the number is.
Okay, what happened with that is that we required the work group to go substantiate, kind of like we did in McKinley, that there was support for the course. There was a real need for something that may be a good idea in one of these discipline meetings. When you go out to the field, you can't get the support, and you can't get the support from transfer in the transfer area. And so we said that it has to come from there were 2 courses actually. Mm-hmm. There was a speech course or a communication course, and if you can't get the support for it to be included with the same criteria thresholds that we use for any other course, then it's probably not a good idea at this point.
We've been waiting for a year to get any kind of email or we want to offer it at our institution. We've been anxiously waiting for the number to offer it. We've noticed that at some higher institutions there is a critical thinking philosophy course, and it seems to fit so well in the new core curriculum.
And
so
your institution
what do we need to do?
bring a just like McClendon did.
Okay, so we need to do this. It's waiting for someone else. But okay,
on the website to request the number, and if there were enough people in the work group, that's what we wanted, the people in the work group to actually if they're really motivated to go ahead and sign up their own institution, but that didn't happen.
Okay, so I need to go and do this, and then what? Then how long is it going to take?
And then you go to the Texas Common Course numbering system and get a number. And then if they approve it, if they look through the paperwork, it's kind of a two-tier process so that we don't duplicate numbers and that there's and then it comes here from the academic review point of view, and we look at how it's transferring. The Texas Common Course numbering system looks at that as well. But it's just that things aren't put in there without a lot of scrutiny.
Okay, did the work group ever actually look at the course and then make the decision, or I'm a little confused?
They brought it forward as a recommendation as a learning, to be added. And we sent it back to the work group. If you want us to add it, show us where it's going to go in transfer. And they didn't do the follow-up.
Oh, okay. So you never got a report from them one way or the other. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
We didn't get the follow-up from them that we needed.
So then, like my institution, we could just go on the ACGM ourselves and
get the
put the
forms
request
and
through.
see if it'll go through. And you would have to meet the same criteria as it has to apply to a major, which is a pretty big hurdle. Big hurdle.
But yeah, that's essentially it. You fill out the form, you gather up the evidence, the documentation, the support from universities and other colleges. You take that to the Texas Common Course Numbering System Board. You make the case there. If they approve it, they'll assign it a number, and then Vanessa and Suzanne will send that packet of materials to us with the number, say, hey, we approve this, we assigned it this number, please consider this, put this on the agenda at the ACGM Advisory Committee, and then it'll come to this committee, and you guys will review the evidence and documentation that you've provided and take a vote.
But does it say on there, like, how many higher institutions you? 5. Okay.
Right. 5 universities need to say that they will accept it and transfer and apply it to major degree requirements for 1 or more degrees. And 5 community colleges need to say, yes, if this course goes into the ACGM, we want to teach it. We will teach it. And that way we know that it has transfer acceptance, and that way we know that colleges will actually use it, because it wouldn't do any good to put a course in the manual if no college actually wants to teach it.
It was proposed originally by the work group philosophy, so you would.
Well, yeah. Again, but see, they're just going to be. You got to distinguish the perspectives here. The philosophy people will be thinking, well, this will be a great philosophy course. It is not their concern or their professional expertise to say, oh, and this will apply to this degree at these universities. They're really not going to be thinking about that. That's not their job.
I know we found a couple universities that offered already, which is why we were kind of waiting for the community college number. So I think we'll follow up on this and see what.
Yeah, and this is a good reference for all of you folks, as well as anyone watching out there in the broadcast, which is that we are responsive to the field and driven by the field. So if you see courses that you think should not be here because they're outdated, if you see missing courses that should be in here because of new developments in 1 or more fields, this is where a lot of the ideas come from, is from you folks at institutions. We expect you to pick up the ball and run with it and develop argumentation and cases and then bring them to us.
There were several bills that came out of the 83rd legislative session regards to secondary institutions providing career and technical programs and courses for students to be workforce ready upon graduations, and several of them had information or a connection with community colleges or higher education. Are you seeing any development in that area, or have questions in regards to, and especially with a number of bills that came out in regards to the workforce, such as when we're talking about dual credit, technical dual credit and how that is working with providing individuals the types of skills that they need in order to have the work documents to determine that they go into the workplace and everything like that. So have you all had conversations or heard from other colleges about some of those bills and how it's coming into effect with higher education institutions?
Yeah, Andrew.
In fact, I was on the phone yesterday with one of the educational service centers, and they are working with the institutions of higher education and the secondary schools in order to try to start to develop these courses to ramp up their career and technical education for these students. One of the bills I followed was a bill, I think it was HB 842, which says that a student will
have 12
must be given the opportunity to earn a industry recognized credential, certificate, or an associate's concurrently with the high school diploma, and those credits should or must transfer to the student's high school graduation plan. It's going to take some work between the institutions of higher education and the secondary schools. That whole dual credit plan is going to have to be put in an MOU, where you can tell these dual credit courses will substitute for these parts inside the student's graduation plan. And House Bill 5 does allow now for more of those credits in a student's high school graduation plan to be satisfied by CTE courses. I think Rebecca and I were speaking on it one day. We looked at, and we saw that the electives, if I'm correct, the elective courses are now able to be satisfied by CTE, and I think there are 7 elective courses that are now inside the high school graduation plan with the endorsement. And this is a foundation with an endorsement. So far, I'm not going to the distinguished yet. But, as well as in the science, the last credit for the advanced science course can be CTE for that full year, as well as in math. So when I added it up, I think it came out to be 18 semesters that there could be used for CTE courses to be used for dual credit and to satisfy those graduation requirements. It's going to allow students now to actually get that certificate. Like I said, it will take some work between the IHEs and the public schools to make that crosswalk to say that these courses will qualify for this, these will qualify for the electives. And then once those are established, then it will be up to the 2 institutions.
There were also several bills, 2, 3, maybe even 4 bills that are about studies that either the coordinating board was supposed to conduct directly or was supposed to coordinate with the institutions on, and that's actually on the other side of the house for me. That's not in the academic affairs, universities, and health related. That's on Gary's side of the house. So if you had any questions about those studies, right, getting Gary in charge of kind of the plan for those various workforce studies?
I don't want to put anything else on his plate, so I'll find out for you. I'm not quite sure, but if it's part of the community and technical college side, yes, it would be under Gary.
If you had questions about any of those studies, you'd want to email or give Gary a phone call, and he could give you the updates on where we are with those.
Are there any other comments or updates that anyone wants to mention? Okay, so we have a few action items. If I can just quickly review that we will meet in the spring semester prior to meeting. It will be a work group meeting. We talked about addressing the enrollments and looking at the courses that are on the list out of the 1,000+ courses to determine if there are courses that needed to be deleted and what action we might want to take on these courses. The co-chairs will work with coordinating board staff to provide a statement in which you will use in order to take back to your institutions to ask about considering, I forget which item that was, but
integrated life.
Yes.
Science.
Number 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was number 12.
Number 12. So it was basically
enrollment handout.
the enrollment handout, but there was another one too that we were supposed
Integrated science.
to. Integrated science.
Master
Yeah.
credit hour science.
Sharon, sorry, can you go back for a moment for when we go through these courses? I know you divided us up into 3 groups.
Yes.
But what courses fall in those 3 groups?
We're going to send that out to
Okay.
you so that if there are questions, we'll ask for your feedback first, and when we send it out, so if you've got some concerns about what's falling in, we'll break up the list or ask the staff to do that to make the first draft pass at that, okay? And then there are the 3 areas, STEM, humanities, and fine arts, so that, and there are about 6 of us, and we'll also alert those committee members that are not here about what committees they've been assigned to. And so those are the action items that we will follow up on and to be prepared. And we'll look at the last week of March, first week of April as possible meeting times for us to return.
No, I'd just like to thank Edgar Garza and Edgar Palacios for their work in their discipline areas on their staff reports, and also thank Vanessa for coming back to us again year after year to help us with the Texas Common Course numbering system, and also the coordinating board staff that helped put the meeting together, primarily Rebecca.
I have one request that you remind the new members to pick a number from the cup.
If you're one of the new members today, as we started out with this morning, you need to pull a number out of a cup to see if you're going to serve a 1, 2, or 3 year term for your first rotation.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Yep.
This concludes our advisory committee meeting for November the 15th, 2013. Thank you.